The biggest unsolved mystery in recent FNAF lore. What the hell does Remember Jeremy mean? There are many theories on this on the internet, but none of them really solve what this mystery means. Well, until today. Gathering evidence from Help Wanted 1, 2, Security Breach, and even going as far back as FNAF 2, it's safe to say that this is a wild ride, and we finally have the answer. So get ready, because you're not going to want to miss a single bit of this. And make sure to subscribe, otherwise Freddy will come and take your dog. Or cat.
I couldn't see his face. He had the visor covering his head. He had ink spilled on himself as well.
Now, the original Remember Jeremy quote actually came from Help Wanted, where when you die, you actually see Remember Jeremy written across one of the screens. Now, there is no context to this at all, it's just plastered on this screen. And this is the last we seemingly see of it until Help Wanted 2, with many people believing it's completely absent in Security Breach and Ruin. Well, that isn't entirely true, because we actually see it in a sticky note in Security Breach, which says Remember Jeremy. Many people have completely overlooked this or completely forgotten it. Although on this sticky note, it actually says Remember Jimmy. Now, I don't know whether Scott was referring to Mr. Beast or Mr. Beast is a FNAF fan. I don't really know, but it does say Remember Jimmy. But I do believe it's meant to say Remember Jeremy. Now, the fact it's even referenced in Security Breach at all must mean something. We then have Ruin turn up, which doesn't mention Jeremy at all, but then the big one, Help Wanted 2, comes up. Now, when playing through Help Wanted 2, you can pick up what's called a memory plush, and it will give you the achievement Remember Jeremy. What is important to note here, however, is that regardless what memory plush you pick up, if it's your first one, you will get that achievement. So whether it's the Foxy plush, the Bonnie plush, Puppet plush, it doesn't matter, you will still get that Remember Jeremy achievement. Now, what is extremely interesting is the fact they've brought this phrase back from the original Help Wanted from Security Breach. It must mean something. And the fact that this icon is actually wearing a Bonnie mask, this must mean something in helping us solve this mystery, Remember Jeremy. Now, this is where it gets confusing, because there are 3 named individuals called Jeremy throughout FNAF history. You got Jeremy Fitzgerald, which is the night guard in FNAF 2, who interestingly enough gets his frontal lobe bit out in the attack of 1987, which is something we'll talk about later. You have the second Jeremy, which is one of the originals, who's one of the original victims who William Afton killed and stuffed inside of the Bonnie animatronic. You also see the gravestone at the end of FNAF 6. Now, there is another Jeremy which seemingly introduces as a new character in Help Wanted, and that is the Jeremy Beta Tester. This Jeremy is actually a tester who worked on the in-game VR experience. Now, during the original Help Wanted, you can collect audio tapes, which is made by the person called Tape Girl. Now, you can play and listen to these tapes, and when you do, you realize that there's a company called Silver Parasol Games, and they were the first company to work on the Fazbear VR experience, and their first tester who was helping make the game was a guy called Jeremy. Now, unfortunately for Jeremy, this is where he encountered the first iteration of Glitch Trap. Now, quick refresher, Glitch Trap is basically the Mimic's code mixed with the subconscious of William Afton. If you want to know all about that, I highly recommend checking out my timeline video after this. Jeremy started spending an awful lot of time inside the VR experience and started to complain of nightmares. In fact, he was spending that much time in the VR experience, he hadn't eaten in days, was looking extremely pale, and they actually caught him talking to someone inside of it.
He doesn't even jump anymore. Nothing scares him. He just stands there like he's talking to someone.
The company soon knew that he had to be replaced, and this is where things take a bit of a dark turn. The Tape Girl records her experience of finding Jeremy in the room, where she quotes something that looked like a Halloween mask lying on the floor. She says she couldn't see his face because he had the visor covering his head and ink spilled all over himself.
There was something that looked like a Halloween mask laying on the floor. I couldn't see his face. He had the visor covering his head. He had ink spilled on himself as well.
Now, it's heavily hinted at throughout that game and through subsequent lore that Jeremy actually sliced his face off using a paper slicer to rid himself of Glitch Trap's control and the mask. Now, that explains the 3 Jeremys, but it doesn't explain who the Remember Jeremy quote actually refers to or what it's trying to tell us. So let me continue to explain. Now, the Remember Jeremy quote actually refers to finding memories, retrieving memories. Now, out of the 3 Jeremys we know of, Jeremy inside Bonnie, Jeremy the Night Guard, and Jeremy the Dev Tester, we actually know that Jeremy the Night Guard was the one who got attacked in the bite of 87. And during that attack, he actually lost his frontal lobe. And what does the frontal lobe actually do in the brain, you ask? It actually records your memories, memory storage. Now, that is no coincidence. The fact we're collecting memory plushies and it says Remember Jeremy is trying to get us to remember the Night Guard Jeremy. But there is a problem with this, because when the achievement pops up, the graphic is remembering Jeremy as a Bonnie mask. So seemingly telling telling us to remember the MCI victim Bonnie. So how does this all work? Well, let me continue to explain. As you play through Help Wanted 2, there's a section in the game where you have to light graves in a specific order. Now, I've talked all about that in a previous video, but what is extremely interesting is if you do it all correctly, it leads to a secret passage where you can pick up a Bonnie mask. Now, the wording to this is extremely similar to Remember Jeremy because it says, "This looks familiar," hinting at regaining a memory, finding something out. Like the character you're playing as is regaining his memories. There's a theme building here. And for us to solve this mystery, we have to go way back to FNAF 2. But just before we do, let's take a look at Help Wanted 2, because that's given us some huge clues in the game itself. Throughout Help Wanted 2, there are various clues throughout the game that tie into the theme of the frontal lobe and memory. One of Carney's lines actually says,
"What's your name? Got your tongue? No need to answer. Don't matter and I don't care."
Indicating that the player may have issues with language and speaking, which is a symptom of frontal lobe damage. There are even multiple lines from Mystic Hippo indicating that the player character may have issues with their memory.
Why are you here? When are you? Do you remember?
The player is also told numerous times about objects that look familiar to them, such as the Faz wrench and the Bonnie mask found in Princess Quest. The game itself repeatedly shows brain imagery, such as the screens on the endos, etc. But all this, why would it be specifically telling you to remember Jeremy? And this is where it actually starts way back in FNAF 2, because remember, as I said, Jeremy Fitzgerald was the security guard, but also Jeremy was the NCI victim inside of Bonnie. Now, during FNAF 2, Jeremy Fitzgerald gets attacked by an unknown animatronic. Now, it's believed to have been mangled, but it's irrelevant for this video, with Phone Guy confirming that Jeremy survives. Now, with the theme of Help Wanted 2 focusing around regaining memories, it seems obvious to me that we could be playing as the original Jeremy Fitzgerald from Five Nights at Freddy's 2. This then explains why it wants you to remember who you originally were. But why? Why would it want you to specifically remember? And how would that then relate to the Bonnie mask? Well, let me continue. Now, many people actually believe we're playing as Cassie's dad throughout Help Wanted 2, and it's heavily implied that Cassie's dad is actually the Bonnie bully we see from the FNAF 4 cutscenes. That then starts to make sense with the Bonnie bully mask and why they want you to remember that, but then how does that play in with the memory? Well, what if the Bonnie bully and Jeremy Fitzgerald were the same person? I mean, it's no coincidence they share the same name. They both have memory functional loss from the frontal lobe. Help Wanted 2 seemingly all but confirms there's problems with your memory, but it doesn't answer why they want us to remember. What do they want us to remember? Well, let me continue, and for that, let's go all the way back to FNAF 2, because if you remember, Jeremy the Night Guard was the first person to notice the weirdness around Freddys. What if he actually noticed William inside the pizza place and attack and lure away the children? He then reported this strange going on to management, but the management is William, and because Jeremy now knew about William, he had to be silenced in order for William to continue. He was attacked, his frontal lobe all but destroyed, removing his entire memory of the event. But the puppet knew of this, and the puppet wants Jeremy to remember, wants him to remember this horrible event and help bring William down. It all but explains the memory loss in Help Wanted 2. It aligns perfectly with Jeremy Fitzgerald's frontal lobe missing and how all the characters seem to mention some form of memory loss. It also explains how everything has the familiar feel, because he's seen it before but can't picture where. But there is one problem with this, and I like to be open and transparent. How does Jeremy the beta tester fit into all of this? Because if you remember, it's heavily implied that Jeremy the playtester sliced off his own face to rid Glitchtrap of his control. So that would potentially mean that Jeremy would be left disfigured. But wouldn't the other Jeremy also be disfigured? I mean, he took a bite to the frontal lobe. He's going to be left with some form of deformity. And we all but know the Vanny mask inserts something into your frontal lobe to be able to interface with the AR world. What if the mask he was using was the prototype Vanny mask, and he simply sliced off the connector connecting to his frontal lobe, hence why we see the Halloween mask on the floor and him covered in some type of blood. This would then all but mean the three Jeremys are the same person. They are one, and the connection links seem to be there. Sure, the Jeremy beta tester link isn't as strong as the other two. Even if we wanted to, we could even say the Jeremy beta tester is a separate entity and the other two Jeremys are one. It would then make complete sense for Help Wanted 2 and the Remember Jeremy line. They want you, the player, Jeremy, Cassie's dad, to remember where he came from, remember what he saw, to help bring the spirits to rest, bring William Afton, Glitchtrap, the Mimic, bring them all down. All the puzzle pieces then start to fall into place. And let's not forget the super important thing. Have you subscribed? Because otherwise Freddy is going to come and take your dog or cat. And if you did enjoy this video, please hit the like button, because I do work extremely hard on them. I'm Twisty the Twisted Animatronic. Stay safe out there, superstars.